So, hi everyone. This is not a video I thought I would end up making, but I just thought I had to, just because I don't want to commit any lies of omission. So, if you haven't seen my original video about the cursed Mauser from Ethiopia, the full details are there. Long story short is I bought a Kar98K from Classic Firearms, and it was advertised as being in good condition. And really it was a gunsmith special. It had critical parts that were broken and so on. And so I ended up contacting them, sending them pictures, and then for weeks and weeks I heard absolutely nothing back. Like I said, see the original video to get kind of the full story. But a couple of days after that video posted, I actually heard back from Classic. I don't know if that's just a coincidence. It probably, I mean, I don't know about probably, but it certainly could be. You know, I'm not an influencer. I don't have a big audience or anything like that. So perhaps, you know, it really was just a coincidence rather than, you know, the stink having been raised by a video that only had a couple hundred views. But then again, they are fairly present on social media, and so maybe they have somebody out there whose job it is to scour places like YouTube and I don't know, Facebook and whatnot for negative reviews, and maybe they did see it and thought they'd, you know, better look into it. And so whatever the reason is, I don't want to, you know, get into conspiracy theories, but they did respond. And what they said was, you know, we apologize for the delay. It turns out that email wasn't flowing between the service department and the parts department, and we just noticed this. I don't know that I buy that explanation, because at this point it was literally a day short of a full 2 months later, and I work in a company myself where we rely fairly heavily on email communication, and if email stopped flowing to us, I think we'd probably become aware of it that same day, or at least by day 2. I don't know, about 2 months seems a little unlikely to me. I mean, they didn't respond whatsoever. They didn't say, you know, we're looking into sending you parts or anything like that. They just, again, I heard absolutely nothing. So that's another reason. And then, you know, if they really thought they had handled it and sent a request for parts, well, the fact that I followed up a couple times within that time period, you know, wouldn't they have kind of, wouldn't that have raised the question, I guess I should say, of why is this guy still emailing us? We already sent him the parts, and they would have checked into it. So not sure that I buy that explanation. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt and, you know, assume good intent and all that good stuff, but not sure that I buy it. But in any case, that's what they said. They said, as I said, that email wasn't flowing, and that he was the guy I dealt with was putting in a request for new parts, and then I didn't hear anything again for about another week and a half. Now, of course, I'm kind of interested because, well, first of all, it's good to have spare parts on hand, you know, just things break or whatever else, and that way it's kind of in stock with me, and I don't have to order in and wait and all of that. Or I could, you know, eBay it to recoup my losses at least. So either way, I'm interested now. But as I said, I hadn't heard anything in a week and a half now. So I noticed that in his most recent email, he signed it with a phone number. So I called that number. Maybe it was a direct line. It turns out that it wasn't, but it was to their general service line. So I guess they really are taking phone calls. At least they were at that time. So I talked to the guy, I gave him the case number, said, hey, you know, so-and-so is looking into some parts for me. Can you tell if they've done that or they've put in an order? And so he says, oh, no, it doesn't look like they've done anything with that yet. What parts do you need exactly? Which I thought was kind of odd, because here you have the whole case in front of you. You have the pictures, I assume. But okay, so I told him I need a bolt body and a firing pin. And he said, okay, I'll make a note that that's what you need, and you should be hearing from us within about a week and a half. And sure enough, within a week and a half, I did hear from them, and they basically gave me a tracking number and said, oh yeah, your firing pin and your bolt body are on the way. And today they arrived. It actually was almost a complete bolt assembly, not just the bolt body and a firing pin. It's missing an extractor. I do have one on hand if I needed to use it. So here it is. Now, the more astute of you may have already noticed that this one, the bottom one, this is the one that they sent, is noticeably shorter than the other. So I'm thinking this has got to be like a Yugo bolt of some variety. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the actual Yugo ones quite as well, or maybe it's Czech or something like that. I noticed there's a flat spot right here on the bolt handle there, so if somebody could identify that, that'd be interesting. But it clearly, I mean, out of curiosity, I threw an extractor on there, and of course, just for fun. And yeah, I wouldn't come close to closing because it is you know, several millimeters shorter, so it's clearly a Mauser bolt, but of the wrong variety. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I guess I have no choice but to eBay it, or maybe I'll contact them and say they sent me the wrong thing, but then would I have to ship this one back to them, and is that worth my money or trouble? Probably not. I appreciate the gesture of going a little bit above and beyond and sending an almost complete assembly as opposed to just the parts that I needed, but it's kind of funny that they sent the wrong thing. So I do realize that the Yugo refurbs are a little confusing because this isn't a Yugo made one, and maybe that's kind of where they got confused. I'm not sure if it's worth the trouble to pursue it any further beyond that, but I just thought I'd, you know, pass on that information just to close the story. So, you know, as I said, so I'm not, you know, committing a lie of omission and create the impression that they simply never did anything about it. It just took them a while. Chronologically speaking, I sent them the pictures and so forth in late May, and now it's August, and I finally have a quasi-resolution. And so I guess there's that. As far as the question of did they earn back my business, I don't think so. Just looking at this is pretty funny. That after all this, the parts they send aren't even correct. You know, it's easy to say no, never. I mean, maybe if something amazing comes along like they do, you know, here's a giant batch of SVT 40s and they're selling half the rate of what you find on Gunbroker, maybe my principles are a little bit for sale there. But I certainly don't foresee this particular outcome changing where I stand with that. But I suppose I do have a couple of lessons then, you know, that maybe a lot of you already know, but for somebody that isn't as experienced as some of the other folks, one of the things that to gather from this is the reason why this Ethiopia stuff is tempting to people. Well, there's probably a few reasons, but one of which is there's kind of this perception in the surplus community that surplus is dead, especially rifles, you know, the era of, you know, bucket loads of cheap, you know, guns, that's all gone now. And so at this point, you know, if you find something at an okay price, you may as well get it because, you know, supplies dry up and then it's only going to get more expensive after that. So just jump on it. And this is kind of one of the maybe somewhat what motivated the decision to buy this, because this was considerably cheaper than the going rate for, you know, German-made Kar98s out there. So, you know, that's kind of the thing. And knowing the reputation of Classic and to some extent, of course, also Royal Tiger, and you know, you kind of taking that risk when you do business with them no matter what. But sometimes, you know, you get this perception that, well, they're really the only game in town and nobody else even has this stuff. And so pretty much if you want one, you gotta go and, you know, that's who you gotta go with. So a couple of things came up throughout this whole situation that, you know, I thought were really quite important examples. Like, for instance, one of the other things that Royal Tiger especially has a lot of is the Carcanos. And so, you know, thinking, well, when are they ever going to come along with more Carcanos? So, like, if you want one and you want it fairly cheap, because the ones coming from Royal Tiger genuinely did cost less than what you would typically find at, say on Gunbroker. And so, you know, this is your chance. And when are more of these going to come along? And then, you know, you wait a few weeks and suddenly everybody has them. You know, Bud's Gun Shop has them. Palmetto State, DK Firearms, and there's probably a few others, I would bet. This is from a different batch that don't come from Ethiopia. They're competitively priced and they're nicer. And so, like, if I had just waited instead of messing around with this Ethiopia stuff, you know, probably would have been a bit happier. And so just because you think they're the only game in town, they might not be. But the other thing to keep in mind is even if they really are the only game in town and nothing else is coming, doesn't necessarily mean jump on it now and you'll miss out otherwise. For example, one of the other models that Royal Tiger is featuring now is the Steyermannliche M95s of various lengths and a couple of different calibers. And so that's another one that I kind of would have liked to own, but I missed the boat when they were like super cheap and you could get them, you know, from Big Five or wherever for, you know, $200 or whatever. I don't even remember what they were selling for at the time, but they were cheap and fairly easy to get, and nobody really was all that interested in them. And so I figured, whatever, you know, obscure caliber that, you know, no big deal. I skipped out on it, and then now I kind of wanted one, and here they are again from Royal Tiger, and they're priced in the like mid 300s or so, which is a good price. Again, better than the gunbroker rate, which is probably more in the high 400s, maybe low 500s. So I was like, well, maybe I'll have to, you know, bite the bullet and you know, take that chance again, because when are we going to get more of these? And how is that ever, you know, when is another opportunity going to come along to get them at that price? Now, the other thing is, and maybe another batch of them won't come in from, you know, Buds or whomever, but I was kind of, you know, browsing around my local forum, and there was a guy who, you know, due to personal circumstances, had to liquidate a good portion of his collection, and I ended up buying one. This is just like literally a couple weeks ago. $200. It's pristine. It's got the like beautiful bore, all matching, you know, still in its cosmoline and all that other stuff. And, you know, action seems really smooth. I think it'll be a million times better when it's fully cleaned out. And $200. I mean, this is better than the price that Royal Tiger was asking. So a lot of people, you know, basically the lesson here is just because it's the only game in town doesn't mean it's going to be the best deal. And if you're patient, you might, there's a good chance that you'll luck into something a lot better, way more, you know, way more worth your money and so on. Because the thing is, you know, the people that buy these kinds of things, they do it, you know, to collect them because they're interesting, because they're fun to shoot, you know, kind of neat pieces of history. Not, you know, nobody's looking at these for any real serious purposes typically. You know, nobody's looking to defend their house with a Vetterli Carcano conversion, hopefully anyways. But so these aren't, you know, subject to the same kind of panic buying that goes on as, you know, some of the more modern firearms. And so, you know, check your local forums, check your pawn shops. You could probably talk them down if, you know, you notice something that's been sitting there for a while, and just do that. So basically, again, to sum it up, you know, when you have these shady businesses that the two motivating factors being, well, they're the only game in town. Well, not necessarily, because stuff might come along, and that often does happen. You know, somebody gets something first, and then suddenly a couple of other retailers get it too. And then the other thing is, even if they do end up being the only game in town, you know, if you're patient enough and such, you're probably going to find a better deal that's way more worth the trouble. And so I guess that's all I'm saying on that. And just closing out this update. Thanks for watching.